Alien billionaire's daughter wakes up pregnant after one night with a poor human. The Platinum Nebula was the kind of place where the galaxy's elite came to forget who they were. Nestled in the heart of New Proxima's financial district, its entrance gleamed with holographic chandeliers that dripped virtual diamonds onto the heads of arriving patrons. For Lena Texari, sole heiress to the Texari interstellar conglomerate, it was the only place she could breathe. Tonight, she slipped through the club's quantum scan entrance, her pearl-white dress flowing like liquid mercury around her slender form. The fabric, harvested from the silk-producing creatures of Epsilon 9, cost more than most humans earned in a year. Her lilac skin caught the pulsing lights, giving her an almost ethereal glow as she moved through the crowd. "The usual Lady Texari?" asked the bartender, a four-armed centaurian with metallic scales. "Double," Lena replied, her silvery hair cascading down her back as she took a seat at the bar. "And please, just Lena tonight." She'd perfected this ritual. Arrive alone, drink alone, leave alone. The weight of being her mother's daughter, a matriarch, Lena Texari, whose business empire spanned 17 star systems, was temporarily lifted in these moments of anonymity. "Rough day in the family business." The bartender placed a glass of iridescent blue liquid before her. Lena took a long sip, feeling the warmth spread through her chest. "Mother wants me to take over the Orion division. Says it's time I stopped playing at Independence. Most would kill for that opportunity. Most haven't lived their entire lives as someone's puppet." She downed the rest of her drink. Another. 3 drinks later, the club's atmosphere had shifted from exclusive to excessive. Lena checked her chronometer. 2:37 local time. She needed to leave before the real debauchery began. Her mother's spies were everywhere, and while Inara tolerated her daughter's visits to upscale establishments, even her patience had limits. Outside, the night air was cool against her skin. New Proxima's twin artificial moons cast an eerie glow over the city's spires. Lena dismissed her driver hours ago, preferring to walk the short distance to her penthouse. The financial district was safe, patrolled by private security drones and populated by the wealthy, even at this hour, or so she thought. She was halfway down Stellar Avenue when she heard them. Footsteps, too many and too quick. Before she could activate her emergency beacon, 3 figures emerged from an alley. Their features were obscured by light-bending masks, military-grade tech, illegal in civilian sectors. "Well, well," hissed a voice. "Look what we found! A pretty little Texari, all alone." Lena's hand moved to her clutch where a small defensive stunner lay hidden. "I'm not carrying much cash. Take my jewelry and go." The tallest figure laughed. "We know exactly who you are, princess, and your mother will pay handsomely to get you back." Kidnapping. Not simple robbery. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs as the realization hit her. The Texari family had enemies across the galaxy, competitors they'd crushed, planets they'd exploited. This was revenge wrapped in a profit motive. The leader lunged forward, grabbing her arm. The diamond bracelet at her wrist sent out a distress signal, standard security for Texari family members, but help would take minutes to arrive. Minutes she didn't have. "Let her go." The voice came from behind them, deep, commanding, undeniably human. The kidnappers turned, momentarily distracted. Lena saw him then. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in worn clothing that had seen better days. His face was partially shadowed by a hood, but she caught the flash of intense brown eyes and the set of his jaw. Determined, fearless. "Mind your business, human," spat one of the kidnappers. "This doesn't concern your kind." The human's mouth curved into a dangerous smile. "I'm making it my concern." What happened next was a blur of motion. The human moved with a speed that belied his size, his fist connecting with the leader's face mask, cracking it down the middle. The second attacker pulled a vibro knife, its edge humming with energy. But the human was faster, catching the attacker's wrist and twisting until something snapped. The third kidnapper fired a pulse weapon, missing the human by inches. The energy bolt hit a nearby advertisement display, sending glass and sparks raining down. Using the distraction, the human grabbed a piece of broken metal and hurled it with deadly accuracy, striking the gunman's hand. In less than 30 seconds, all 3 attackers were on the ground. The human stood over them, breathing heavily, knuckles bloody. "You okay?" he asked, turning to Lena. Up close, she could see him clearly. Young, perhaps 24 or 25 by human standards. His skin was tanned from actual sunlight, not the synthetic kind used in tanning salons. A small scar crossed his right eyebrow. His clothes were cheap but clean. Everything about him screamed lower-class human, yet he'd just taken down 3 armed assailants without breaking a sweat. Yes, Lena managed, suddenly aware of how she must look, a terrified alien aristocrat clutching her designer purse. Thank you. He nodded, then glanced at the fallen attackers. These guys won't stay down long. You got somewhere safe to go? Lena's mind raced. Her penthouse was still 10 minutes away. Her security team would be searching for her based on the bracelet signal, but they'd be looking in the wrong direction. She deviated from her usual route home. I can call someone, she said, reaching for her comm device. A groan from one of the attackers made them both tense. No time, yeah, the human said, taking her hand. Come on. Before she could protest, he was pulling her down the street, away from the financial district, and toward the edges of what humans called the Sprawl, the less developed, predominantly human section of New Proxima. Lena had never set foot there. She'd seen it only from her private shuttle, a patchwork of aging buildings and makeshift structures that housed the city's working class. Most were humans who'd come to New Proxima seeking opportunity, only to find themselves trapped in low-paying jobs serving the alien elite. Where are we going? She asked, struggling to keep up in her impractical shoes. Somewhere they won't look for you, he replied, his grip firm but not painful. Trust me. And strangely, despite everything she'd been taught about humans, their unpredictability, their emotional nature, their primitive technology, Lena did. The Sprawl was nothing like Lena had imagined. From her penthouse, it had looked like a uniform mass of gray and brown, but on the ground, it pulsed with life. Makeshift market stalls lined narrow streets, selling everything from salvage tech to street food that filled the air with unfamiliar spices. Humans of all shapes and sizes moved through the crowds, occasionally casting curious glances at the odd pair, a lilac-skinned alien aristocrat and her human protector. Not much further, the human said, guiding her down an alley adorned with strings of mismatched lights. I'm Nate, by the way, Nate Reeves. Lena, she replied, deliberately omitting her family name. He smiled, a quick flash of white teeth against tan skin. Just Lena? For tonight, they climbed 5 flights of stairs in a building that had clearly seen better centuries. The lift, Nate explained, worked when it felt like it, which wasn't often. His apartment was at the end of a narrow hallway, secured with a surprisingly sophisticated biometric lock. Military grade, Lena observed as he pressed his palm to the scanner. Nate's expression tightened. Salvaged, I do repair work. The door slid open to reveal a small but meticulously organized space. One room served as kitchen, living area, and workspace, with a narrow doorway leading to what Lena presumed was a bedroom. Tools and electronic components covered a workbench by the window, which offered a stunning view of New Proxima's skyline, the same towers she usually looked down from. It's not much, Nate said, suddenly self-conscious, but it's safe. Those guys won't find you here. Lena moved to the window, taking in the reversed perspective of her world. How can you be sure? The Sprawl protects its own. He shrugged off his jacket, revealing a simple black t-shirt that did little to hide his muscular build. And humans stick together in this city. She turned to face him, suddenly aware of how out of place she must look. Her dress, her jewelry, even her skin. Everything about her screamed wealth and privilege in a place where such things were scarce. Why did you help me? She asked. Nate busied himself at a small kitchenette. You needed it. Most humans in the Sprawl would say I deserve whatever happens to me. The Texari name isn't exactly beloved here. He paused, a container of water halfway to an ancient heating unit. So, you are a Texari. Would that have changed your decision? No, his answer came without hesitation. Though it might explain why those weren't ordinary street thugs. Your family has some serious enemies. Lena sank onto a worn couch, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the attack was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. My mother has enemies. I'm just collateral. Nate placed a steaming cup before her. Tea. Real tea, not that synthesized crap they serve uptown. The liquid was dark and fragrant, nothing like the precisely calibrated beverages served in the financial district. Lena took a cautious sip, surprised by its rich complexity. "It's good," she admitted. "One of the few Earth imports worth the tariffs." Nate settled into a chair across from her, studying her with those intense brown eyes. "So what's the plan? I'm guessing you've got security people looking for you." Lena touched her bracelet, which had gone silent. "The signal's blocked here. Too much interference in the Sprawl." "Convenient," Nate said with a half-smile, "though they'll track your last known location eventually." "By morning, probably." She hesitated. "I should go back." "Not tonight. Those guys are still out there." The thought sent a chill through her. Not fear for herself, but for this human who'd risked his life for a stranger, a Texari no less. "You could have been killed," she said softly. Nate shrugged. "Wouldn't be the first time I've tangled with your kind security." "They weren't security, they were..." She trailed off, unsure how to explain the complex web of corporate espionage and revenge that defined her world. "I know what they were," Nate said, his voice hardening. "I've seen their type before. Ex-military, probably Centaurian or Rigelian based on their fighting style, professional kidnappers." Lena stared at him. "How would you know that?" A shadow crossed his face. "Let's just say I wasn't always a repair tech." The revelation hung between them, adding another layer to the mystery of Nate Reeves. Lena found herself studying him more closely, the way he moved with controlled precision, the scars on his hands that spoke of more than just repair work, the alertness in his eyes that never fully disappeared. "You're not what I expected," she admitted. "From a human in the Sprawl." "From anyone." Something shifted in the air between them. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the distance between them charged with an energy Lena couldn't name, or rather, wouldn't name, because the feeling coursing through her veins wasn't entirely unfamiliar. It was attraction, pure and simple, but magnified to an intensity that left her breathless. She'd heard the rumors, of course, how human pheromones affected certain alien physiologies, particularly our Proxima females. How the chemical composition of human sweat contained compounds that mimicked Proximan mating signals. She dismissed them as xenophobic propaganda, designed to keep the species separate. Now, sitting across from Nate in his modest apartment, she wasn't so sure. "You should rest," he said, breaking the tension. "Take the bed. I'll keep watch." "I couldn't." "You can and you will." His tone brooked no argument. "Rich girl like you probably never slept on a couch in her life." The teasing note in his voice made her smile despite herself. "You'd be surprised what I've done." Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Nate was the first to look away. "Bathroom's through there if you need it," he said, gesturing to a door beside the bedroom. "I've got a spare shirt you can sleep in." As Lena changed out of her evening dress and into Nate's oversized shirt, she caught her reflection in a cracked mirror. Without her designer clothes and jewelry, with her silver hair loose around her shoulders and her feet bare on the worn floor, she looked different. Less like a Texari heiress and more like just Lena. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. When she emerged, Nate was at the window, keeping watch over the Sprawl. The city lights played across his profile, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the alertness in his posture. "Thank you," she said simply. "For everything." He turned and the look in his eyes made her heart race. "Get some sleep, princess. Tomorrow's going to be complicated." As she lay in his bed, surrounded by the unfamiliar scent of him, Lena knew he was right. Tomorrow would bring security teams, explanations, a return to her world of privilege and politics. But tonight, in this small apartment in the Sprawl, with a human stranger standing guard, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She felt free. Sleep eluded Lena. The unfamiliar sounds of the Sprawl filtered through the thin walls of Nate's apartment. A distant laughter, the hum of hovercrafts, the music from neighboring units. So different from the carefully soundproofed luxury of her penthouse. She lay in his bed, surrounded by his scent, earthy, distinctly human, intoxicating. After an hour of restless tossing, she gave up. Wrapping herself in a thin blanket over his borrowed shirt, she padded barefoot into the main room. Nate stood exactly where she'd left him, a silhouette against the city lights. He'd removed his shirt in the warm night air, revealing a back mapped with scars, some surgical, others clearly from combat. The sight of his bare skin sent a flutter through her that had nothing to do with fear. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning. "How did you know it was me?" He glanced over his shoulder, a half smile playing on his lips. "Your footsteps, lighter than any humans. Plus, there's no one else here." Lena moved beside him at the window. From this height, the financial district glowed like a distant galaxy, cold and beautiful. "It looks different from here." "Everything does." "Do you hate it?" she asked. "The district, I mean. What it represents." Nate considered this, his profile sharp against the night. "Hate's a waste of energy. It's just a different world. One that doesn't include people like me." "Because you're human?" "Because I'm poor." His tone wasn't bitter, just matter of fact. "Species is just one barrier. Credits are the universal language." Lena studied him, this human who defied every stereotype she'd been raised with. Humans were supposed to be primitive, emotional, driven by base instincts. Yet Nate showed a wisdom that many of her mother's advisors lacked. "Why are you really in the Sprawl?" She asked. "You're clearly not just a repair tech." Nate turned to face her fully. In the dim light, his eyes were almost black. "Ex-military, Human Defense Corps. I was stationed on Proxima 6 during the border dispute." The revelation hit Lena like a physical blow. The Proxima 6 incident had been one of her mother's most controversial military actions, a peacekeeping operation that had left hundreds dead, most of them human colonists. "My family," she began. "Supplied the weapons," Nate finished. "I know. And yet you saved me." He shrugged, the movement rippling across his muscled shoulders. "You're not your family." The simple statement unlocked something in Lena's chest, a tight knot she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. All her life, she'd been a Texari first. Lena second. Her identity, her worth, her very existence defined by her bloodline. "What happened?" she asked. "After Proxima 6? "Honorable discharge, medical reasons." His hand absently traced a particularly vivid scar along his ribs. "Came to New Proxima looking for work. Turns out ex-soldiers aren't in high demand, especially human ones. So you repair think, I'm good with my hands." The statement hung in the air between them, suddenly charged with meaning beyond the literal. Lena felt heat rise to her cheeks, her lilac skin likely darkening to a deeper purple. "I've noticed." Nate's eyes widened slightly, then crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "That's so." The atmosphere shifted, the air between them electric with possibility. Lena was acutely aware of her state of undress, of his bare chest mere inches from her fingertips, of the way his human scent seemed to cloud her thoughts. "I should warn you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are biological factors at play here. Human pheromones affect my species. What I'm feeling might not be entirely natural." Nate stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "And what exactly are you feeling, Princess?" The nickname, which should have annoyed her, sent a thrill down her spine. "Attraction, intense attraction. That makes two of us." His voice had dropped an octave, rough around the edges. "Though I don't have pheromones to blame." "It would be a mistake," Lena murmured, even as she swayed toward him. "Probably. Our species aren't even compatible." Nate's hand came up to brush a strand of the silver hair from her face. "Aren't they?" The touch of his fingers against her cheek sent electricity coursing through her body. Proxima females were sensitive to touch, especially from potential mates, and something primal in her recognized this human as exactly that. "There could be consequences," she managed her last feeble attempt at reason. "I'm willing to risk it if you are." The last thread of her resistance snapped. Lena closed the distance between them, her lips finding his with unerring precision. The kiss was like nothing she'd experienced before. hot, demanding, overwhelming in its intensity. His arms encircled her, strong and sure, as the blanket slipped forgotten to the floor. What followed was a blur of sensation, his hands mapping the contours of her body, her fingers tracing the scars that told his story, their bodies moving together in an ancient dance that transcended species. In those moments, she wasn't a Texari heiress, and he wasn't a human ex-soldier. They were just Lena and Nate, two beings finding connection in a cold universe. Later, as they lay tangled in each other's arms on his narrow couch, Lena traced patterns on his chest, marveling at how different his skin felt from hers. Warmer, rougher, alive with a vitality that seemed uniquely human. "Was it like this for your people?" she asked. "On Earth? Before the diaspora?" Nate's fingers played with her silver hair, spreading it across his chest like liquid moonlight. "Like what?" "This intensity, this connection." He considered the question, his expression thoughtful. "Sometimes when it was real, when it mattered." "And does this matter?" The vulnerability in her voice surprised her. Nate tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Yes," he said simply, "it matters." In that moment, Lena believed him. Whatever forces had brought them together, chance, fate, biology, had created something authentic between them. Something that, against all odds, mattered. Dawn would come soon enough, bringing with it reality and all its complications. But for now, in this small apartment above the Sprawl, they had created their own world. One where a Texari heiress and a human ex-soldier could find, however briefly, a place to belong. Neither of them could have known that their night together had already set in motion events that would change both their lives forever. And that inside Lena's body, the impossible was already beginning to take form. Morning arrived with the harsh blare of Lena's emergency beacon finally breaking through the Sprawl's interference. The bracelet on her wrist pulsed with urgent light, jolting her from Nate's embrace. "Your security team?" Nate asked, instantly alert, the soldier in him emerging as he reached for his discarded clothes. "Yes." Lena silenced the beacon with a touch. "They've triangulated my position." They dressed in tense silence, the intimacy of the night before giving way to the reality of daylight. Lena smoothed her rumpled evening dress, feeling oddly reluctant to shed Nate's borrowed shirt. "How long do we have?" he asked, checking the street through a gap in the window covering. 20 minutes, maybe less." She fastened her jewelry, each piece a weight, pulling her back to her world. "They'll come with a full tactical team. Standard procedure for a kidnapping." Nate's jaw tightened. "The Sprawl doesn't take kindly to corporate security forces. This could get ugly." "I'll meet them at the district boundary," Lena said. "I can explain I was never in danger." "And what exactly will you tell them about last night?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications. Lena met his gaze steadily. "That I was assisted by a good Samaritan who provided shelter until morning. Nothing more." Something flickered in Nate's eyes. Disappointment, perhaps, or resignation. "Right. Back to our separate worlds." "It's not that simple." "Isn't it?" He gestured around the modest apartment. "This is my reality, Lena. That's yours." He pointed toward the gleaming towers of the financial district. "One night doesn't change that." But it had changed something. Lena could feel it. The connection they'd formed went beyond physical attraction, beyond the chemical pull of pheromones. For the first time in her life, she'd been seen as herself, not as the Texari heiress. "I want to see you again," she said, surprising herself with her directness. Nate's expression softened. "That would be complicated." "I'm good at complicated." She stepped closer, resting her hand on his chest. "I can come back to the Sprawl, in disguise." "Playing tourist in the slums?" His tone was skeptical, but his hand covered hers, warm and strong. "Your security would never allow it." "They work for me, not the other way around." A reluctant smile tugged at his lips. "Stubborn, aren't you?" "You have no idea." Their goodbye was brief but intense, a kiss that promised more, that defied the social barriers between them. Then Lena was gone, slipping through the early morning streets of the Sprawl toward the boundary where her world began. Her security team met her with a mixture of relief and suspicion. The head of her detail, a stern Arcturian named Thex, bombarded her with questions about her abductors while medics scanned her for injuries. Lena maintained her story: an attempted robbery, a helpful human, a night spent safely waiting for morning. If Thex noticed the slight darkening of her lilac skin when she mentioned the human, he didn't comment. For 3 weeks, Lena played her part perfectly. She attended corporate meetings, smiled at her mother's chosen suitors, and pretended nothing had changed. But everything had. Food tasted different. Colors seemed brighter. The luxury that had once been invisible to her now felt suffocating. And then there were the dreams. Vivid, intense visions of Nate that left her gasping awake, her body aching for his touch. On the 23rd day after their night together, Lena slipped her security detail. Dressed in plain clothes with her silver hair hidden under a cap, she took a public transport to the edge of the Sprawl. The human district pulsed with the same raw energy she remembered, drawing her in like a gravitational pull. Finding Nate's building was easier than she expected. Her feet remembered the way, as if some part of her had been mapping the route home all along. He opened the door before she could knock, as if he'd been waiting for her. "You shouldn't be here," he said, even as he pulled her inside. "I had to see you." This time there was no hesitation. Their bodies found each other with the certainty of planets falling into orbit. What followed was a reunion of not just flesh, but spirit, a recognition that whatever had begun between them that first night was far from finished. Afterward, they lay tangled in his sheets, her lilac skin stark against his tan. "This is insane," Nate murmured against her hair. "You know that, right?" "Completely." Lena traced the line of a scar across his shoulder. "I don't care. Your mother would have me executed if she knew. Only if she caught you." Lena propped herself up on one elbow. "I'm very good at keeping secrets." And so began their clandestine affair. Twice a week, sometimes more, Lena would escape to the Sprawl. They explored hidden corners of the human district, underground music clubs where the bass vibrated through her bones, street markets selling earth delicacies she'd never imagined, rooftops where they could see both their worlds spread out before them. In those stolen moments, Lena discovered a freedom she'd never known existed. Nate showed her how to navigate the Sprawl's unwritten rules, taught her human expressions and slang, introduced her to the rich tapestry of Earth culture that had survived the diaspora. In return, she brought him glimpses of her world, insider knowledge of corporate politics, ancient Proximan poetry, the complex etiquette of her species that humans found so baffling. "Your people really have 17 different words for profit?" Nate asked one evening as they shared a meal in his apartment. 23, actually," Lena smiled, "each with its own moral implication." "And how many words for love?" The question caught her off guard. "Just one," she admitted. "We're not particularly romantic as a species. Humans have dozens." His fingers traced patterns on her wrist. Passion, affection, devotion, adoration. "Are they all different kinds of love? Different facets of the same thing?" His eyes met hers, serious now, like looking at a diamond from different angles. The comparison made her heart race. They hadn't spoken of love, hadn't dared put a name to what was growing between them. To do so would make it real, would force them to confront the impossibility of their situation. But as weeks turned to months, Lena found it harder to return to her world each time. The penthouse felt empty without Nate's presence. Corporate meetings seemed meaningless compared to their late-night conversations about life. The universe, what it meant to be truly free. She was living a double life, and with each passing day, she knew which one felt more authentic. Then came the morning she woke violently ill, her body rejecting the breakfast her personal chef had prepared. 3 days in a row, the same symptoms. On the 4th day, she visited her private physician. The diagnosis was impossible, unthinkable. "I'm what?" Lena stared at the holographic scan floating between them. "Pregnant," Dr. Marin repeated, his professional composure slipping. "Approximately 10 weeks along. The fetus appears unusual." "Unusual how?" "Its genetic structure contains markers I've never seen before." The doctor manipulated the hologram, highlighting areas of the developing embryo. "It's as if. But no, that's not possible." "What's not possible?" Lena demanded, though she already knew the answer. The father? He can't be human. Dr. Marin shook his head. Our species aren't compatible. Everyone knows that. But as Lena stared at the proof floating before her, she realized that everyone had been wrong. And now she faced the most difficult conversation of her life. Telling Nate he was going to be a father to a child that shouldn't exist. I'm pregnant. Lena watched Nate's face as the words hung between them in his small apartment. She'd rehearsed a dozen different ways to tell him, but in the end, directness seemed the only approach that honored what they'd become to each other. For a moment, his expression remained frozen. Brown eyes wide, lips parted in mid-sentence about the meal he'd been preparing. Then slowly he set down the cooking utensil and turned fully toward her. He paused, visibly processing. That's supposed to be impossible. Apparently not. Lena placed the holographic projector on his kitchen counter and activated it. The three-dimensional image of their developing child appeared, unmistakably a fetus, but with subtle anatomical differences that marked it as neither fully human nor fully Proximan. Nate approached the hologram with the caution of someone nearing a bomb. His hand passed through the image, fingers tracing the outline of what would become their child. How? He whispered. Dr. Marin has a theory. Proximan females have a unique cellular adaptation mechanism. It's how we survived colonizing different planets with varying atmospheres. He thinks my body... She hesitated, searching for the right words. My body adapted to make compatibility possible. Because of the pheromones? Partially, and possibly because my species evolved from adaptable genetic structures. We're natural mimics at a cellular level. Nate's eyes hadn't left the hologram. Is it healthy? The question, so practical, so concerned, made Lena's throat tighten with emotion. Yes, different, but developing normally according to Dr. Marin. And he can be trusted? He's been my physician since childhood. He's sworn to confidentiality. For now, Nate's voice hardened. But what happens when your mother finds out? When the corporation realizes what this means? The question cut to the heart of Lena's fears. Her mother, matriarch Lena Texari, wasn't just the head of their family, but the CEO of an interstellar conglomerate that controlled everything from pharmaceuticals to weapons manufacturing. A woman who viewed her daughter as both heir and asset. She doesn't know yet, Lena said, but she will soon. I can't hide this forever. Nate finally looked away from the hologram, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. What do you want to do? Not, what are we going to do, or what should we do? But what did she want? In that moment, Lena realized how rare it was for anyone to ask her that question. I want this child, she said, the certainty in her voice surprising even herself. And I want you. Nate crossed the small space between them in 2 strides, taking her hands in his. Then you have me. Both of you do. The simple declaration, so human, so direct, brought tears to her eyes. In her world, nothing was ever straightforward. Every relationship was a negotiation, every commitment a contract with clauses and conditions. My mother will fight this, she warned. She'll say I've been manipulated, that the pregnancy is dangerous, that it threatens corporate interests. Let her, Nate's jaw set in a determined line. I've faced worse odds. You don't know my mother. And she doesn't know me. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. Or what humans will do to protect their families. Family. The word resonated through Lena like a perfect note. That's what they were becoming. Not just lovers, not just 2 beings from different worlds, but a family. We need a plan, she said, her practical nature asserting itself. Mother has scheduled the quarterly shareholder meeting for next week. All major stakeholders will be present, including the board of directors. You want to confront her publicly. It's the only way. Lena squeezed his hands. In private, she controls everything. But in front of the board and shareholders, she has to maintain appearances. Corporate law requires her to act in the best interests of the company. And how does your human baby daddy fit into those best interests? Nate's tone was light, but his eyes remained serious. That's what we need to figure out. Lena deactivated the hologram, the image of their child fading. We need leverage. Nate's expression shifted, the ex-soldier emerging. What kind of leverage? Information. Something that makes our relationship an asset rather than a liability. Lena began pacing the small apartment. The Texari Corporation has been trying to expand into human markets for years, but there's resistance, distrust. For good reason, Nate muttered. After Proxima 6, exactly, the corporation needs to rehabilitate its image with humans. An idea began forming in Lena's mind. What if our child became a symbol of that new relationship? The first human Proximan hybrid, born of genuine connection rather than corporate maneuvering. You want to use our baby as a PR stunt? Nate's voice held a note of disbelief. No. Lena stopped pacing, turning to face him. I want to use the idea of our baby to protect the actual baby. My mother understands optics better than she understands love. If she sees the marketing potential, she might accept it, Nate finished, understanding dawning. That's, actually brilliant and slightly terrifying. Welcome to corporate politics. Lena offered a wry smile. But we need more. A backup plan if she rejects the public angle. Nate was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. What about your father? Is he in the picture? The question caught Lena off guard. Her father was rarely mentioned in Texari circles, a subject closed by her mother's iron will. Snap! He died when I was young. At least that's the official story. And the unofficial story? Lena hesitated. There are rumors that he left, that he couldn't handle the corporate life, the constant pressure. Mother never speaks of him. Do you know his name, where he might have gone? Taran Texari. He would have dropped the family name if he left. Lena's mind raced. Why? What are you thinking? If he rejected that world, he might be an ally now. Nate's eyes gleamed with strategic calculation. And if your mother loved him once, his opinion might still matter. It was a long shot, but Lena felt a flicker of hope. I have access to the corporate archives. There might be records, communications. Then that's our first move. Nate pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. Find what we can about your father, prepare our case for the shareholders, and confront your mother with both barrels loaded. The military metaphor made Lena smile despite the gravity of their situation. So typically human, facing an impossible situation with determination and a battle plan. And if none of that works? She asked softly. Nate's arms tightened around her. Then we run. I know people from my military days. Places off the grid where even the Texari influence can't reach. The thought of leaving everything behind, her wealth, her position, the only world she'd ever known, should have terrified Lena. Instead, she felt an unexpected sense of freedom. With Nate and their child, she could build something real, something honest. 1 week, she said, sealing their pact with a kiss that tasted of promise and defiance. 1 week to change everything. Neither of them could have known that in the gleaming tower of Texari headquarters, matriarch Ainara was already viewing the medical report that Dr. Marin had been forced to submit. A report detailing the impossible pregnancy of her daughter and heir. Nor could they have known that the matriarch's reaction was not the rage they expected, but something far more calculated. For Ainara Texari had secrets of her own, secrets that the existence of a human Proximan hybrid threatened to expose. The Texari Tower dominated New Proxima's skyline, a spire of polished metal and transparent alloy that caught the morning light like a beacon. Inside its top-floor conference room, the corporation's most powerful figures gathered around a horseshoe-shaped table, their attention fixed on the quarterly projections displayed in the air before them. Matriarch Ainara Texari presided at the head of the table, her lilac skin a shade darker than her daughter's, her silver hair pulled into a severe style that emphasized her sharp features. Unlike Lena, who inherited a softness from somewhere, Ainara was all angles and calculation. As you can see, she was saying, our expansion into the Centaurian markets has exceeded projections by 17%. However, the human territories remain, she paused, searching for a diplomatic term, resistant to our overtures. A murmur passed through the assembled board members, all Proximans of high standing, all concerned with the bottom line above all else. Perhaps it's time to reconsider the human markets, suggested Director Pax, an elderly Proximan with pale blue skin. Their resources are limited, their technology inferior. The conference room doors slid open, cutting him off mid-sentence. Every head turned as Lena entered, dressed not in her usual corporate attire, but in a simple human-style outfit. Dark pants, a fitted jacket, her silver hair loose around her shoulders. "Forgive the interruption," she said, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "But I believe I have a solution to our human market problem." Inara's expression remained neutral, but her eyes narrowed fractionally. "Lena, this is unexpected. So is what I have to say." Lena moved to the center of the room, activating her own data projection. "Before I begin, I'd like to introduce someone." On cue, Nate entered. He'd traded his worn clothes for the best he could afford, a simple but well-fitted suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and confident posture. The board members stared, some with undisguised contempt, others with curiosity. "This is Nate Reeves," Lena continued. "Former Human Defense Corps, decorated veteran of the Proxima 6 conflict, and," she took a breath, "the father of my child." The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Director Pax actually rose from his seat, pointing an accusatory finger at Nate. "This is outrageous. A human? In these chambers?" "A human who saved my life," Lena countered, "and whose child I now carry." Inara remained silent, her gaze fixed on Lena with an intensity that would have made most wilt. But Lena stood her ground, moving closer to Nate, their shoulders touching in a silent display of unity. "Impossible," declared another board member. "Our species cannot interbreed. This is some kind of deception." "I have the medical report," Lena said, expanding her projection to show the fetal scans. "Confirmed by Dr. Marin himself. The child is real, and it represents something unprecedented, a natural bridge between our species." The scientific data silenced some of the objections, replacing outrage with reluctant fascination. Lena pressed her advantage. "For years, we've tried to penetrate human markets through traditional means. Buyouts, technological leverage, political pressure. None have succeeded because humans value something we've never offered them. Genuine partnership." She gestured to Nate, who stepped forward. "Humans don't trust the Texari Corporation," he said, his deep voice carrying authority despite the hostile audience. "And with good reason. Proxima 6 wasn't a peacekeeping mission. It was a resource grab that cost hundreds of human lives." More outraged murmurs, but Nate continued undeterred. "But humans are also pragmatic. We understand the value of moving forward, of building something better from painful pasts. What we don't accept is being treated as inferiors." Lena took over again. "Our child represents a new possibility, a future where humans and Proximans aren't separated by prejudice or, corporate interests, but united by something more fundamental. Love," Nate said, simply taking Lena's hand. Director Pax scoffed. "This is absurd sentimentality. Matriarch, surely you won't allow..." "Enough." Inara spoke for the first time since the interruption, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. "I would speak with my daughter." "Alone?" "With respect, Matriarch," Nate said, stepping slightly in front of Lena. "Where she goes, I go." A tense silence followed as human and Proximan Matriarch locked eyes in a battle of wills. To everyone's surprise, Inara's mouth curved in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Very well, my office, now." The matriarch's private office occupied the pinnacle of the tower, its walls transparent on three sides to offer a panoramic view of New Proxima. As the door sealed behind them, Inara moved to a control panel, activating a privacy field that turned the walls opaque. "You've made quite a spectacle," she said, turning to face them, "though I expected nothing less." "You knew," Lena realized, "about the pregnancy." "Of course I knew. Dr. Marin works for me, as does everyone in that medical facility." Inara studied Nate with clinical detachment. "What I didn't know was the identity of the father, a Human Defense Corps veteran. Interesting choice." "It wasn't a choice," Lena said. "It just happened. Nothing just happens in this family." Inara moved to her desk, pressing a sequence on its surface. A hidden compartment opened, revealing an old-fashioned paper photograph. She handed it to Lena. The image showed a younger Inara, her expression softer than Lena had ever seen it, standing beside a tall, broad-shouldered man with dark hair and unmistakably human features. "Dad was human," Lena whispered, her world tilting on its axis. Taryn Reed, Inara confirmed, a diplomatic attaché assigned to New Proxima during the early contact period. Brilliant, idealistic, utterly convinced our species could coexist as equals. Her voice held an emotion Lena had never heard before, something like regret. The board disagreed. Reed, Nate repeated. Any relation to James Reed? He was a diplomat who disappeared about 30 years ago. His brother, Inara said. Your uncle, apparently. Lena's mind reeled with implications. You told me he died. It was simpler than the truth, that the board forced him to leave, threatened his life if he ever contacted you. Inara's composure slipped momentarily. I fought them, but in the end I chose the corporation over him, a decision I've lived with ever since. Where is he now? Lena demanded. The Sprawl, Nate answered before Inara could, understanding dawning on his face. The repair shop 3 blocks from my apartment. Reed's Repairs. I've passed it 100 times. The owner's an older human who keeps to himself. You've been watching him? Lena accused her mother. All these years. Protecting him, Inara corrected, ensuring the board never found him. Why reveal this now? Nate asked, suspicion evident in his tone. Inara's gaze returned to the fetal scan still hovering in the air between them. Because history is repeating itself, but this time there's proof of what I've always known. Our species aren't just compatible, they're complementary. Your child isn't an aberration, it's evidence. She straightened, the formidable matriarch once more. The board will fight this, just as they fought my relationship with Taryn. But this time, I have leverage they didn't anticipate. What leverage? Lena asked. You, Inara said simply. The living proof of human Proximan compatibility. My half-human daughter, who's been running the Orion division, our most profitable sector, for the past year without anyone suspecting her heritage. Understanding dawned on Lena. That's why you pushed me into management so young. To prove humans aren't inferior, to show the board that human genetics don't diminish our capabilities but enhance them. Inara's expression hardened with determination. And now, with your child, we have irrefutable biological evidence. This isn't just about corporate politics, Nate said. This is our family. In my world, they're one and the same. Inara turned to the window, reactivating its transparency to reveal the city below. But perhaps it's time for that to change. She faced them again, decision made. Go to Tehran, tell him I kept my promise. His grandchild will grow up in a world where its heritage is a source of pride, not shame. And the board? Lena asked. Leave them to me. A predatory smile crossed Inara's face. I've been planning this confrontation for 30 years. They just didn't know it. 3 hours later, Lena and Nate stood before a small shop in the heart of the Sprawl. The sign above the door read Reed's Repairs in simple lettering. Through the window, they could see an older man with silver-streaked dark hair bent over a workbench, his hands moving with the precision that came from decades of practice. Ready? Nate asked, squeezing Lena's hand. She nodded, her free hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. Ready. As they pushed open the door, the man looked up. For a moment, time seemed suspended as he took in the sight of them. A human man and a Proximan woman, hand in hand. Then his eyes met Lena's, and recognition dawned. The same gray-blue shades staring back at each other across generations. Lena, he whispered, rising slowly. Dad, she replied, the word unfamiliar, but right in her tongue. And as Taryn Reed embraced his daughter for the first time in 25 years, as Nate watched with a smile that promised future embraces of his own child, as the first human Proximan hybrid grew safely within Lena's body, a new chapter began, not just for their unconventional family, but for two species who would soon discover that their greatest strength lay not in separation, but in the beautiful complexity of their union.